Good morning and welcome everybody to this ERC webinar. My name is Clarissa Gomes and I'm an European funding advisor at Luxinnovation. I'm here today with my colleague Francesca Borrelli, senior European funding advisor, and also our guest speaker, Camille Perchoux. I'll introduce both a little bit in a while. So just a brief introduction on us. Francesca and I are the national contact point for the ERC program for Luxembourg. And we are part of the European Research and Development and Innovation Support Team at Luxinnovation. And our team supports research organizations and private companies in Luxembourg with all needs related to European funding, especially the Horizon Europe program. So we try to understand your needs and prioritize to offer you the best support around European funding opportunities. And we provide information such as this webinar that we are having today. Here's our agenda for today. In the first session, I will give an overview of the ERC and cover the 2025 work program. Introducing grant types, eligibility criteria, and general procedures of the work program. Then Francesca will present the evaluation procedure and proposal development. And also joining us today is Camille Perchoux from LISER, the Luxembourg Institute of Socio-Economic Research, as a testimonial who received a starting grant. And she will give her perspective on preparing an ERC starting grant proposal. And at the end, we'll have a Q&A session. Before we begin, just a few words on housekeeping. We are recording today's session, and after the webinar, we'll share the slides as well as the recording with you. By this time, you already noticed that your microphones are muted and you won't be able to share your video. So this is just a feature of the platform that we're using, but you can ask questions in the questions tab. And there is also a chat function for comments. Please don't put questions in the chat just because we may miss them. And without further ado, let's get to our first session, the ERC overview. So I want to start by positioning the ERC within Horizon Europe, which is the main research and innovation funding program between 2021 and 2027, with a dedicated 95.5 billion euros for its 7 years duration. I won't go into details on it today, but I want to mention that ERC is within a particular part of this program, which is Pillar 1, called Excellent Science. Opportunities under this pillar include the ERC, but as well the Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions, the MSCA, and the research infrastructures. And all these under Pillar 1 are known collectively as a bottom-up approach, which means that all these opportunities don't have a list of predetermined topics, so the researcher chooses the project topic that they want. And the ERC corresponds to 17% of the entire Horizon Europe budget, which is 16 billion for these 7 years of duration. So the ERC started in 2007 with the mission to support the highest quality research to advance knowledge and scientific achievements in Europe. So the ERC supports investigator-driven frontier research across all fields based on scientific excellence. So really the program aims for breakthrough research, and it's not looking for incremental research. It supports multi- or interdisciplinary projects, pioneering proposals addressing emerging fields of research, or proposals introducing unconventional or innovative approaches and scientific inventions as well. Some key features of the program are that it funds projects based only on the excellence of the idea. Again, it's fully bottom-up, so all fields are welcome and the researcher is free to choose their own topic. It represents a quality label, leading ERC grantees to attract really additional funding and also gain recognition. And finally, the funding is split based on the number of applications and not by topic. There are different opportunities under the ERC depending on your career stage. 3 are individual grant schemes, so the first 3 on the top row, the starting grant, the consolidator grants, and the advanced grants. And they are targeted at researchers depending on the experience and time after obtaining a PhD. We'll look into each in the next slides. And there are 2 other grant schemes, the Synergy Grant, which is for 2 to 4 principal investigators, and the Proof of Concept, which is available only to existing ERC grant holders to provide support to develop a proof of concept to really bridge the gap between research and the earliest stage of marketable innovation. So the starting grant, as the name says, supports excellent principal investigators starting their independent research team or program. Still, you have to show that you are able to conduct research independently of a supervisor. So one thing that will be evaluated in your CV and track record is that you have at least 1 publication as a main author or without the participation of your supervisor. And in the CV and track record, you can show other outputs that also serve as evidence that you're able to implement a research project on your own. The maximum budget is 1.5 million euros for 5 years. And additional funding is possible, up to 1 million euros for special costs. For example, related to the PI moving to an European member state or associated country, or purchase of major equipment, access to large facilities, or major experimental and field work. So this is possible. And the type of funding is actual costs. And just to mention that the call for this grant is open, and you already have access to the links for the funding portal with the relevant documents. And the link is there on the slide, which you'll be able to access later. The consolidator grant is the next step at the career stage. So after the starting grant, it supports principal investigators that are really consolidating their independent research team or program. In your CV and track record, you must be able to show evidence of such research independence. It funds projects up to 2 million euros for 5 years as well. And additional funding, as explained, for the starting grant is also possible based on the same eligibility. And the type of funding is the same, which is actual costs. The advanced grant supports principal investigators that are already established as research leaders. So typically in ERC, advanced grant PI is an active researcher with a recognized track record of significant achievements. And the maximum amount of the budget is 2.5 million euros, also for 5 years. And the additional funding up to 1 million euros is also available here. The main difference of the advanced grant is the type of funding, which is lump sum as opposed to actual costs. And I'll talk about it more in a while. Finally, the Synergy Grant is for a group of 2 to 4 principal investigators to address ambitious research problems that an individual PI could not address alone. So here is the key. Here is really key that the principal investigators demonstrate in the proposal that the project is complex and ambitious and can only be achieved with the collaboration and synergy of the PIs that are involved in the project. And one of these PIs can be based outside Europe. The funding amount here is higher because it involves more principal investigators and can be up to 10 million euros for also 6 years, so 1 year more than the previous grants. And the type of funding is actual costs. So the call for this grant is also open, and likewise you have access to the relevant documents, and the link is provided also on the slide. As we saw, there are different grant types for all career stages, but starting grant and the consolidator grant are target individuals within a specific period from their PhD defense. So the eligibility period is always calculated on the 1st of January of the year of the call. So for the 2025 work program, researchers submitting a starting grant should have had their PhD defense between January 1st of 2018 and December 31st, 2022. And for the consolidator, between January 1st of 2013 and December 31st of 2017. Notice that these last years are inclusive. So extensions to this calculation are possible. For example, maternity or parental leave, long-term illness, clinical training as well, or principal investigator unable to work due to natural disaster or seeking asylum. And for the advanced grant and the synergy grant, there are no specific criteria. Regarding the researcher, there are no restrictions based on nationality, current location, or employment or contract status. But there is a criteria for the host institution where the PI will conduct the research, which must be based in a European member state or associated country. And the host must also provide a support letter committing to host the PI for the duration of the action. Finally, there is a time commitment required of PIs, both to spend on the ERC grant and in the European country. So this time commitment is calculated as an average across the entire project duration. So for example, for the starting grant, you must spend at least 50% of your ERC project and the minimum of 50% of your time in an European member state or associated country, and so on. It's really important to keep this information in mind when planning your proposal. Moving on to the latest work program. The 2024 work program of the ERC introduced some changes which remain in this 2025 program, and it's really relevant to highlight them as they impact how you prepare the proposal. So this table summarizes the main changes, which we'll see in more detail in the next slides. A key change relates to the assessment, where more emphasis is put on the idea. So the first aspect the evaluators will assess will be the groundbreaking nature and ambition of the project, as well as its feasibility. Another change was the PI profile. So you can list up to 10 research outputs and explain with a short narrative. You can also explain career breaks and diverse paths. Regarding the evaluation procedure, only up to 44 proposals move to step 2, and more on this later as well. And a new feature, which is exclusive of the advanced grant since last year, is that the funding mechanism is lump sum instead of actual cost. The next change relates to the evaluation panel. So when you submit an ERC proposal, you must choose a panel that best reflects the project's main field of research. And Francesca will talk more about this later on. So the changes for this year is that there's a new panel in social sciences and humanities, panel 8, studies of cultures and arts, and also one panel under physical sciences and engineering changed the description. Finally, there are eligibility extensions for disability and major disasters. So a little bit more detail on the CV and track record. So the PI profile is really important, is a really important part of your application, especially for the first evaluation step. The change implemented last year is along the same line as some national funding agencies are adopting, which focuses on a narrative CV. So for those of you who are in Luxembourg and have already submitted applications to FNR, to the National Research Fund, you are likely familiar with the narrative style, even though the format is different for ERC. So this part is divided in 3 sections and can have a maximum of 4 pages. So the first section is personal details such as education and employment. The second is on research achievements and peer recognition. And here you should list a maximum of 10 achievements with a short narrative. And do not list more than 10 because evaluators are instructed to assess only the first 10 listed. And really try choosing the relevant outputs for your proposed project and explain why the achievements listed are important for the application and what was your role in achieving them. Here's really the place to add any relevant prizes and fellowships as well. And the third section allows you to provide additional information, such as career breaks or diverse paths and any other contributions to the research community that is beyond research achievements. So the template has instructions on each section, which will help guide you through those. And since the starting grant and the synergy grants are already open, you can familiarize yourself with the template, find more details in section 2. Very briefly, for those submitting an advanced grant, the budget will follow the lump sum model, meaning it's defined upfront based on the estimated costs. So all costs should be justified since the panel evaluates the budget. If it's not properly justified, it can be cut. When determining personnel costs, both panel and applicant have access to historical ERC personnel cost data, and this can serve as a benchmark for you if you need it. It's important to keep in mind that this budget is entirely related to the project's activities. So the contribution is based on the work carried out and reported, irrespective of the actual costs or the successful outcome of the project activities. So if you carried out the activities planned, even if you didn't achieve the expected results, this should not impact the budget. As usual, you'll submit a report at the end of the project, and if you complete all activities planned in your grant, you will receive 100% of the budget requested. If you couldn't complete all activities or some were reduced for some reason during the project, you may receive less. And just a reminder, additional funding is possible for the eligible costs, as I mentioned previously, such as those related to PIs moving to Europe, and portability of the grant to another host institution is also possible here. We left the link here to the agency, the ERCEA, the agency that manages the ERC grants, to a webinar on lump sum if you want to know more about that. And the reminder is that the advanced grant of the 2024 call is still open with the deadline in August. For the starting consolidator and advanced grants, there is 44 maximum proposals per panel that will be evaluated in step 2. If there are more than 44 proposals with an A score, the panel will decide which are invited for step 2. And these are the score is A invited and A not invited. Proposals receiving a score A not invited have absolutely no restrictions to submit in the next call. If they are resubmitted, though, they will be evaluated all over again from step one. And Francesca should detail a little bit more on that later. There are different resubmission restrictions for ERC calls, and if you don't score particularly well, you cannot submit to the next year's call. So we can see this table that the evaluation outcome and the restriction to the 2024 call are all described there. For example, if you submitted the starting grant in 2024 and received a score B or C in step one, you cannot apply to this year's call. You must wait until 2026. However, if you got a score of either A or B in step two, there are no restrictions. You can apply this year. For the Synergy grant, you can apply this year unless you receive the score C in step one. So you have all the details there. And here's the timeline of the different ERC grants. Note that there isn't a huge amount of time between the call opening date and the deadline. So the starting grant and the Synergy grant in orange and green have already opened, and they close in October and in November, respectively. The Consolidator grant will open in September, and the Advanced grant for 2025 will open in May next year. And here is just a note of the 2024 Advanced grant that is still open with the deadline of 29 August this year. Now I will hand over to Francesca to present the evaluation process and proposal preparation.
Hi, good morning. Now let's go through the evaluation process and the proposal preparation. So remember, first thing, the most important is that your proposal will be evaluated on the excellence. This is the only criteria of evaluation of your proposal. That is, your research project will be assessed against the groundbreaking nature, the ambition, the feasibility, the scientific approach, and the impact. Of course, in parallel, the panel members will also look at your CV and the track records, the one that was explained by Clarissa. So they will look if you have the scientific capacity based on what you wrote in the CV, if you have also shown creativity and expertise, but also the capacity to run a project, a challenging project. Of course, this is based on your career level. So it will be starting grant, consolidated, advanced, different tracking records. But remember that the main thing will remain your research project. Next one. Before we go into the evaluation, I want just to show which are the different parts of your proposals. The proposals are made of 4 parts. We have the part A, which is the administrative forms plus the budget with the resources and the time commitment, also the ethic and security questionnaire. Then there are supporting documentation, and this is for starting a consolidator is your PhD certificate, but also very important, the host institution support letter. And of course, if you request extension of eligibility, you have also to upload the documents that will show you that you can request this extension. Then the part B1 and the part B2, these are really the research project and your CV. At the part B1 and part B2, it's very important to explain what they are, because part B1 will be the only part that will be evaluated at the first step, and I will explain you in the next slide what is the first step. It's made of 3 documents that they make up to only 10 pages. It is the cover page and the abstract, the extended synopsis, and the CV and the track record. And then there is the part two, where the part B2, where you can have a much more detailed proposal made up of 14 pages, and the funding ID, that is the current or past project that you run. The next slide, we will see, in fact, the evaluation steps. So your proposal for starting, consolidator, and advance will be evaluated in 2 steps. For the synergy, there is an additional step, which is not figurated here, but more or less you can imagine that there is an additional step in between. What is the step 1? Step 1, you have your proposal submitted. You selected already also the panel that we'll see in the next slide, the abstract and the keywords. At this point, the agency and the panel chairs, they have all the information to assign your proposal to panel members. The panel members keep experts in the area of your in the domain that you selected, but can be not really your let's say your peers, your colleague, so are generalists in your field. And on the base of the abstract and of keywords, they are assigned to your proposal. What it happens when this assignment is made, in general, can be from 3 panel members up to 5 panel members. Then they start the individual evaluation. The individual evaluation is made remote, and each person will assess your proposal based exclusively on part B1. That is the synopsis and your CV and track record. No other documents. The other information on the eligibility is the agency that will evaluate that, not the expert. And the extended, the proposal, the full proposal of 14 page, it will be at another step. On the base of these 2, only, as we saw, 3 documents, abstract, synopsis and CV, they will score your proposal. Then they will meet at a panel meeting and they will discuss and do ranking. The ranking can give you 3 evaluation, A, B, and C. As Clarissa already explained you, C means you can submit only after 2 years, B, you have to wait 1 year. A, you can have from last year A invited and A not invited. So it's still a very good proposal. You can submit in the next year, but unfortunately, due to capacity of the agency, they decided to put this cap of 44 proposals that we will send to step 2. At step 2, in the proposal will be evaluated with all parts, part B1, part B2, but also the budget. The panel members are the ones that will evaluate, but at this point, remote reviewers will be added to the evaluation, and these are really the experts in your field, really the ones that are your peers. And as well, there will be a remote evaluation, then the panel meets, and then there is a discussion, and again, there will be a ranking where you can be ranked B, A, and or A. B, you are not, your proposal didn't pass and it's rejected, but you can submit the next year. A, you can fund it, but unfortunately you can also not be funded due to budget limitation. After all this process is finished, you will get the feedback. The very good thing is that all the people that submitted the proposal will receive a feedback, and this is very important for the future application, because you can take into account which are the doubts, which are the remarks of the panel members and the remote reviewers if you arrive to step 2. The next slide, now we see the panel structure. This is very important. You have to select a panel where you want to be assigned. And there are 28 panels, and they are divided in 3 big categories. You have here all the titles, but if you look into the work program, there are also descriptors of these panels. And the best strategy is to select the panel that really describes your proposal. It's what you want to aim is that expert in your field near to your proposal will review your submission. So you have to look really for the panel that best matches what is the innovation, where belongs the innovation of your proposal. And this is how you have to select the panel. There are no strategy, because as I said already, what you want is that your proposal goes in the right hands. And the next one. Yes, as I said, these are the titles that we show you, but there are also descriptors. So have really a good look in the descriptors of these different panels. And of course, you have to add the free keywords when in the submission of your proposal. There is the possibility to add a second panel selection. This is up to you. But you have to take into account that if you select a second panel, the panel chairs can even decide to give your proposal to the other panel, so as main panel. So it's a very delicate reasoning that you have to make and to select this very, very careful. On the basis of this panel selection, the abstract and the keywords, your proposal is assigned to panel members. Now let's go into, again, the different part of the proposal. As we said, the important part, what will give you the possibility to move on, it's first the part B1, which is done cover page and abstract, extended synopsis, and the CV. What is the cover page and the abstract? Next one. It's an abstract that is very important for the panel's chair and also from the agency to understand what your proposal is about and to assign, as we said, to panel members. So it's of utmost importance, and it should, in only 2,000 characters, contain all the information that can give to the people that manage this process an idea of your project. It's important that you don't put, of course, confidential information, because this abstract is the one that will be published online once you have, if your proposal is funded. And is a very good advice that you go on the website of the ERC to check for the funded projects, and you can see the abstract of all. You cannot have the proposal, but you can see the abstract of all funded projects. This is very good, because you can have an idea of how to write a good abstract. And this is called it's one page only. Then we have really the synopsis, the extended synopsis. It's of next one. The extended synopsis is 5 pages, and this is a really concise representation of your project. As you can see from the template that you will be able to download from the system, you don't have any structure for these 5 pages. It's really up to you to create the structure. You have a short description of what the Commission is expecting from you in this part, but what you have to take into account and what can help you to decide the structure of this synopsis are the questions that the evaluators have to assess on the basis of your proposal. And this is really the groundbreaking nature, the ambition, and the feasibility. It's very important also to explain how your proposal goes beyond the state of the art in the context of your domain. You have to show that you know precisely what is happening, even if there is competition in this field. There are different strands of research going from the challenge towards the main aim. You have to show that you know exactly what is happening. Of course, we have to remember that this is the main part of B1, but there is also the CV and the track record where, on the basis of what you have written in the research proposal, the evaluators will look if you have the capacity and you have also track records to show that you are able to run this project. So it's really up to you what you want, how you want to structure this proposal, but you have to take into account that you have to answer to the questions that are for the evaluators. Next one. So what are some tips that we can give, some advice that we could give to you is that you have to find the right balance, which is very complicated for such a short proposal of 5 pages. So you have to describe the innovation, you have to describe the sources, you have to show the feasibility. And this is very important because the ambition of the proposal, it's important, but also that you show that it can run, and you have to show that it can run from month 1, from the starting of the project. Also, as we said, this proposal at step 1 will go to generalists, so avoid in B1 very technical terms or things that people might not be familiar with. And you have also to show that your scientific approach is sound. Of course, also that your main objective are realistic and are based either on something that you have from literature or from some preliminary result. It's not mandatory to have preliminary result. In the case you don't have preliminary result, you have to show that on the basis of what has been done so far, there is a specific challenge and a specific need, and you know how to move forward. Then you can move on. This is step 1. So step 1 was cover page with the abstract, your synopsis of 5 pages plus the 4 pages of CV and track record. Also, all this, try always to play smart with these documents. Don't repeat. So if you have already a very good sentence in the abstract, there's no need to repeat the same sentence in the extended synopsis, because it has to be concise. And as well, you can in the CV and track record explain something that you were not able to explain in the previous section. But now let's hope that you moved to step 2, and now you have to write the proposal, the 14 pages proposal. This proposal as well is not very structured. You can see the template, but at least it tells in the template, it tells that you have to include the state of the art and objectives, section A, and the methodology, section B. So at least you have 2 sections which have to be complete. But more than that, you don't have a structure. Besides the question that were already asked at step 1 and will be again evaluated at step 2, you have to add additional detail. Additional detail on what? On methodology, working arrangements, why the working arrangements, so often it's the work packages are related and are right for the objects that you are pursuing. And of course, also estimated time scale, the resources, and the commitment. In B2, you can play very smart. Try not to repeat what is already in B1, because at this stage, at step 2, the evaluators have everything. So in B2, you can refer to B1, to things that have been already written. The opposite is not true, because in B1, even if you refer to B2, the panel members cannot check that. Why? When you are at step 1, at step 2, you can do this. So try to, again, to play smart and not repeat the information. The budget is taken into account not as the excellence of the proposal. So your proposal will be evaluated on the excellence. But of course, after your proposal is evaluated, the budget will be checked and will be seen if there are if everything is properly justified, if the resources are in line with the work that you want to do. And of course, if something is not justified, the panel members and the agency can decide to cut some of your budget, but it does count in the excellence of the proposal. Next slide, I think as again what is to consider, but I already said, don't repeat what has been already in B1, try to expand and add more information, be technical in this stage, because here you have the remote reviewers who are really the expert in your field. Pay attention to the current state of the art, and if there is something, again, because as we know in a field there might be different approach to solve the same problems, also highlight that you know other competition in the field, but explain why your approach is the best. Very, very important is the mitigation strategy. So you have to acknowledge that there might be problems during the running execution of your project, which might be internal to the project, but also external to the project. So try to identify them and to provide mitigation measures so that you know in case there is a problem how you will solve, what is the plan B, what are the actions, which are the collaboration that you can put in place if something happens. Of course, you have to explain why you want specific team members, why, for example, you will hire a postdoc or a PhD, in which field, why they are key for this project. And next slide, I think we are towards the end, that yes, another thing, your proposal has to be easy to read, not only in the text, but also in the preparation. For example, the agency told us that sometimes there are still track changes in a proposal submitted. Has to be the documents have to be neat and clear. The pictures, images, workflow that you want to use are very welcome, but also them have to be of good quality with correct agendas that explain the meaning of the different picture that you want to put. And then finally, next slide. No. Stop. Anyway, B, of course, you have to, what are the rejection? Of course, the rejection are mainly on the excellence. As we said, it's the only criteria of excellence. And here it's very, very important to ask for support from your peers, for people that you trust and you usually collaborate with, to give you the right feedbacks. Sometimes it's the scope is too narrow, or instead you are it's too ambitious and the feasibility is very difficult to assess, or the work plan is not enough detailed, the risk management is not explain which are the different risks. And of course, in part 2, the methodology is the very important part. You have to show which are the techniques and tools to use, why putting the things together is innovative. So it's the really important part. There are also sometimes comments on the principal investigators that is not sufficient, the track records that they have, but this is really up to you to show in the CV plus track record that you have all the capacity to run the project. So it's important, of course, the publication, but it's not the only thing. It's not the only criteria. And as all applicants receive feedback, it's very important that you are not discouraged from rejection, because statistics say that the second, the third submission are more successful than the first. Also because you have all this feedback from the panel members and the reviewers, so you can profit from them and the next years submit a much more successful proposal. I think this is all the information that we want to give you, but on the ERC website there are extensive uh, resources that and are very of a very good quality. So we advise you to check on their website, and we put already you the link for the webinars that are most important. The deadlines, I think, also in the next slide, we repeat just the deadlines. And if you are a PI, a researcher in Luxembourg, do not hesitate to contact Clarissa and I, because we are the NCP for the ERC program here in Luxembourg, and we will be more than happy to support you. So in the next slide, we also left you some information about our team at Luxinnovation, our support, and of course, we can help you in your process. Now, I think with this, I thank you for this attention so far, and now I would like to give the floor to our speaker, Dr. Camille Perchoux. She's a research scientist in urban development and mobility at LISER, which is the Luxembourg Institute of Socio-Economic Research, and she is a grantee of a starting ERC, and she will talk more about it in the next presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francesca. So yes, today I'm gonna structure this presentation in three parts. I will give you a short biography or short bio elements on what I did achieve and did not achieve at the time of the submission of the ERC proposal. I will briefly present you the content of the project that has been granted. And finally, I will give you some general thoughts and I guess advices on what I think was important at the time of this proposal writing. So, okay. In a nutshell, so I was born and raised in the southeast of France. I have a background initially in literature and a bit also in science. And I have done a master's degree and a bachelor degree in geography, in urban planning, and then in quantitative geography. Then I reached the PhD program. It was a dual, so I was awarded both from Montreal University and Paris University, Sorbonne University, in public health epidemiology. So it's a very interdisciplinary profile, bridging both geography and public health epidemiology to basically try to understand how our geographic life environment influence our health and our health behaviors. Then I did a short postdoc in Lyon in a research laboratory looking at human nutrition, and I was more specifically looking at the time at the environmental determinants of physical activity and sedentary behaviors. And then I joined LISER in 2016 as a postdoc on a project looking at daily mobility, urban environment, and healthy aging. So a project really tightly linked to the same content or a similar content of what I'd done at the time in my PhD. In 2021, I submitted and was awarded with the ERC Starting Grant that I will detail to you in a few minutes. And at the moment, I am a research scientist at LISER and also an ADR PhD supervisor at the University of Luxembourg. So what I do with this background and this research is basically to try to understand how urban environment and places that we visit during our day-to-day activities are influencing population health. It means that in terms of methodology, there is a big part of my work which is tightly linked to how to measure the environment we are exposed to around our place of residence, but also along our daily mobilities. It means that this research is also dedicated to develop new measurement tools or new exposure measures to refine our understanding of how the environment gets under our skin. And finally, I use a socio-ecological approach that basically acknowledges the fact that the environment is one determinant among other, and it may interact and synergistically with other types of determinants to shape, first of all, our population health, but also more vulnerabilities and inequalities in health across social groups. So in terms of thematics, and you will see also the thematics through the ERC grant, and this is also why I try to stress them. You will see that most of what I did was a stepping stone to the different thematics and methodology that I used in the proposal. So a big part of my work is dedicated to assessing daily mobilities and activity patterns to fully measure and understand environmental exposures. Then I had a big part of my research, mostly as a postdoc, but also as a PhD, looking at health behaviors and more specifically physical activity, notably during transportation. And before getting the ERC Starting Grant, I had a first project funded by the FNR core proposal on time-varying neighborhood effect on cardiometabolic health. So as you will see, it's a different type of health outcome, but the methodology is still related to how to measure neighborhood effects on health while taking into account the time component, while during my PhD I was taking into account the spatial component through mobilities. So the project that was funded is about stress. It's about stress and how our geographic environment as well as daily activity are influencing stress. In the background of the literature at that time, over the past two decades, we've been mostly interested in how to measure the environment, looking at the spatial component of this exposure and around our place of residence and across our daily mobility over the course of the day. So this proposal is building on this and trying to add an additional layer to understand how if we add the temporal component, we have a better understanding of how the environment is influencing our health. So why stress? Stress is something that we all experience on a day-to-day basis, but it is, and it's not well known, a risk factor of 75 to 90% of disease, and not only mental health issues, but also physical health like cardiometabolic health, cognitive disease, autoimmune disease, and it's also a risk factor of numerous unhealthy behaviors like lack of physical activity, unhealthy diet, higher consumption of drug, alcohol, smoking, and so on. And our daily life environment do play a role in shaping our stress level. You have multiple theories linking how natural environments have more restorative qualities than urban environments. These we know, and we have quite some evidence on the different factors that may play a role in stressing us or in the opposite, relaxing us. What we do not know, however, is what if we spend much less time in this green environment and much more time in those complex urban environments? Or if our exposure to this environment is much more fragmented over the course of the day, our stress level at the end of the day will be way different. Also, if you're alone in this park reading a book, or if you are in the same park but watching for the children so they do not go too far or hurt themselves, your stress level will be different. So what we do with the Fragment Project is in general to try to understand how our neighborhood environment and daily activities play a role in shaping the stress level of Luxembourg residents. And we do this with a team, a very interdisciplinary team, including epidemiologists, people from psychology, from geography, from health, from data science, as well as from mobility. More specifically, we try to understand how the fragmentation of our exposure to different places and to different time of the day will influence our stress level. And now here, when I talk about stress, I talk about momentary, daily, and chronic stress, as well as social inequalities in stress. So we have very simple framework for our objective and our hypothesis, saying that the environment is influencing momentary, daily, and chronic stress, and that our exposure patterns in space and time may play a role in the way we are influenced by our environment, notably in terms of location, but in terms of time, the number of time we're exposed to an environment, the duration to which we're exposed to an environment, and when at what time of the day we're exposed to those environments. We look at activity patterns and transport modes as key elements that may either modify or mediate the effect of the environment on our stress levels. And finally, we look at social inequalities in terms of gender and in terms of socioeconomic status. We do use three methodologies. Qualitative research, because we have very few evidence in the literature at the moment on the situation when those environment stress moments are experienced. We will use a national survey that I will detail to you in a few seconds that notably use participants' voice to measure the stress levels. And finally, we use virtual reality as a useful tool to run experiments where we can control the exposures to different environments and evaluate their effect on stress. So one of the main part of this project that was divided basically into work packages was an observational study. Here, it's our survey that is using, as you will see, different tools with the only goal to measure stress in daily life environment with as less burden as possible for the participant, while still keeping a high accuracy on the time and the place of where the exposures are experienced. So what we did is that we have an online survey linked to a map-based questionnaire referencing where the participants regularly go and where they regularly conduct their day-to-day activities, and we correlate this regular exposure pattern to chronic stress. And part of the population that will be surveyed with this map-based questionnaire will be invited to a mobile survey where we will use a combination of different technologies, including GPS, including ecological momentary assessment. I will dig into that a bit, but it's basically asking you multiple times per day your emotions and additional information. And we will use the voice to measure momentary and daily stress. All this information is safely stored in EU-based server. We will run epidemiological and spatial analytical models, and this is made in order to inform our local and national stakeholders with relevant information on urban stresses. So, geographical ecological momentary assessment was existing indeed before the submission of this grant. This is something that comes from psychology that is incrementally used in geography and is basically sampling multiple times per day participant experiences and behavior in situ and in real time. And in our project, we sample 4 times per day participants' perceived stress levels and mood, activity type, environment, social support in the morning, their sleep quality in the evening, their general stressful events. And each time we ask them to do a vocal task in order to have an additional measure of physiological stress in addition to the perceived stress. This allows us to answer our question of where and when the stress is experienced, what they do, with whom, and why they are stressed at that specific moment. If you combine this with the GPS tracking over 15 days, you have a very acute picture of what environmental exposure your participant experienced during 15 days, and you have at the end 1,000 measures of stress with your whole sample that will allow you to understand how stress varies between days and across and within days. So to do this, we build a collaboration with another research laboratory that has developed an app and that we tailored for our survey, and that is made out of sampling participant experiences in a more simple way and with the less burden, with a very precise characterization of their mobility pattern, still to answer our research question. And finally, we are developing different vocal tasks in order to ask our participant to give vocal samples and then to analyze vocal biomarkers of stress in their voice. In addition to this first work package, we built a virtual reality lab, which is aimed to systematically evaluate stress variation in a very controlled environment. Virtual reality is actually a very innovative tool that makes it possible to systematically manipulate and test different environmental factors like the height of the building or the density of the greenness, to manipulate them while maintaining a high level of realism, which ensure that you're still evaluating the effect of the environment on participant stress and not just the effect of the experiment and the experimental setting on stress. That also allow us to evaluate the attributable parts of each factor that may play a role on stress, which is one of the limitations of our observational study, in which we have the possibility to measure accurately some environmental factors, but some others will be out of our possibility to be measured because we are not able to quantify them. In terms of stress measurement here, each time for both projects, we do use perceived stress, so asking your participant, even in virtual reality, how stressed are you now? But also we do use physiological stress measurement, including heart rate variability, skin temperature, electrodermal activity. We even use pupil size as stress biomarkers. So the whole project each time try to understand how your stress varies using both perceived and psychological and physiological stress measurements. So at the end, you are walking, and this is very important, you are walking in a virtual environment, which is extremely immersive while having real-time and physiological measurement of your stress level, and you can manipulate different factors. And currently we are manipulating 8 factors like the height of the building, the density of the greenness, the crowdedness on the sidewalks, the traffic intensity, the type of the building, whether they're residential or whether they also include some shops and different amenities, the type of crossing for pedestrian, and you can then systematically evaluate the share of stress which is related to each factor. What we aim to do, or what we expect to find in this project is, first of all, we are building a new analytical framework for neighborhood effect on health. Indeed, the notion of fragmentation of exposure pattern is new. And what is specifically new is that with this framework, we aim to acknowledge the meaning of time in place and health research, and not only on longitudinal studies over 5 or 10 years, but the meaning of time in also shorter time period like 15 days or a week. We do believe that a better assessment of time will allow us a better assessment of social inequalities in stress. Indeed, we do believe that less advantaged population, in addition to visiting more stressful environment, may spend more time in them or accumulate different sequences of environmental exposure that may be even more stressful and more harmful to them. By combining different methodology, both in real-life environment and as observational methodologies, but also experimental ones, combining psychological and physiological stress measurement, perceived environmental measures, and objective ones, we do aim to advance risk assessment. And finally, we aim to create new knowledge on environmental stresses. So if it's not clear, please let me know in the chat your question on the project, and then now I will give you some general consideration thinking back of the period when I was writing the project. You know that ERC grant proposal, a high risk, high gain, this is highly linked to innovation. I do believe that in this proposal, we aim to bring innovation not at just one point, but at every point of the proposal in terms of conceptual theoretical framework. We took the concept of fragmentation of daily activities that is coming from rooted in time geography, and we adapted it in the field of epidemiology and notably neighborhood effects. In terms of methodology, we are using virtual reality, we are using voice biomarkers, which are not widely used actually, and not in the specific, in combination with the different aspects that we've used in this project. And finally, you can be also innovative in the type of findings you want to create. You do not want just to validate what has been done, but you want to create new knowledge. Excuse me. What was specifically innovative at the time in this project, so was the concept of fragmentation that bridges different disciplines, mainly geography and epidemiology. I tried to disentangle the notion of time in place and health research in order to provide a better understanding of neighborhood effect, but also social inequalities in health. The use of virtual reality has been done while it was not mainly done. Most of the literature in experimental research was based on videos or on still images, and only one publication at the time validated the framework of using virtual reality in combination with a motion system, including walking. We are using biosensors, which in this very new experimental setting is even more new. And of course, if it has been slightly validated at the time we started the project, and actually we embodied the person who started to validate this experimental setting in our project, we strengthened the feasibility of the project by running some pilot study in order to validate our experimental setting before running bigger experiments. Regarding the use of vocal biomarkers in real-life environments, it was also important to consider that studies using voice are not looking at environmental stresses. At the moment, no study is combining geographical explicit ecological momentary assessment with vocal biomarkers. None of them are using the multiplicity of vocal tasks that we are developing in this project. And we are conducting this over 15 days, which is also not done in the literature. And we do hope that these two different methodologies aiming at answering similarly the same questions will provide new knowledge on the urban stresses. I would like to stress here that in my proposal, and I think in general, you do not need to master every aspect of your proposal. My background, as you understand it, is in geography and public health epidemiology. My PhD was how to account for daily mobility in place and health research, and more specifically, neighborhood effect on health research. And I have a large expertise on map-based questionnaire, GPS study, geographic information system, spatial and epidemiological models. What I did not do before submitting the ERC is working on stress, focus groups methodology that I did not present here, but there is also a qualitative component. I've never worked on using virtual reality. I've never done any experimental research. I had never done any vocal biomarkers research, and I have never run as a PI a data collection campaign. What I did do at the time of the ERC submission was to work on numerous health outcomes, even though I had not been working on stress. One of my key skill, I would say, is to conceptualize, qualify, and quantify space-time environmental exposure. I had work on transportation and daily mobility tools and analysis. I have also quite some research on social inequalities. I had a project funded on the notion of time and time varying neighborhood effect on health, but with a much longer frame, 10 years. Here we are not looking at the same temporal scale. And I have been involved in intersectorial participatory workshops, which are also one of the way we are disseminating our results. Therefore, if you do not need to master every component, you need to have the right people next to you. And in this project, we are collaborating with one partner on virtual reality, one partner on vocal biomarkers, which is actually the LIH, one partner in France, INSERM, on the app that we are developing. We have one psychologist on board. We have multiple experts on mobility and geographic information systems, and one person also involved on exposure to pollutant, which is not one of my background and competence. All the experts that were brought to the project were past or ongoing collaborators, which I believe is also a way to show the feasibility of your project. So here you can see like the large range of different disciplines that are mobilized in this project, including health geography, GIS and remote sensing, data mobility transportation, virtual reality technology, qualitative research methodology, social epidemiology, environmental exposure, digital health data science, psychology, and AI, but also ethics in AI. Your partner, you can involve them through PhD co-supervision, through visiting, through steering committee, but the idea of the ERC grant is mainly to be in your team, to be able to develop yourself the different component of the project while still being guided by other partners. Thinking back at how much time it took me to create this proposal, so I know that for some ERC grantee it was much quicker. For me, it took me 1 year, on average, a bit more 1 year. I had the initial idea of looking at the concept of fragmentation from time geography and to bring it to health and epidemiological research 1 year before submitting the project. I've read every ERC funded project, abstract of ERC funded project from the website. During the following spring, LISER created a support committee, and we used to meet every month to talk about conceptual framework. to ask me to provide some short writing parts, and this is very important to not go straight to the full proposal, but really think of your objective, your rationale, why you want to do that, why it is important, what is innovative, and then to discuss on how you will achieve it and have a very precise picture of how you want to answer your objective and hypothesis. A couple of months later, I had also a mentor that was offered by LISER. He was a former ERC grantee in a very similar domain, including environment and depression. In winter, the following winter, I drafted my B2 part. It took me quite some time, and I had back and forth with the mentor, with the LISER supports committee. I also had Luxinnovation revising my proposal 2 times, and I had sent my proposal with colleagues I trusted. And finally, I think it was on average 3 weeks before the submission of the project, or 1 month before, I started to write B1. At the time, by writing B2, your budget is very clear, your methodology is very clear, and B1 is about creating a small, simple story of what you want to achieve. And for the oral, because I think it's important as well to talk quickly about it, I have no other advices than practice as much as you can. Practice. On my side, I had 2 mock interviews with interdisciplinary panel. I created a doodle with every researcher I trusted, sent them some short description of the project, and I ran between 15 to 20 in mock interview with colleagues. I wrote every question that they asked me in a general document that ended up to a 40-page document, and I took the time afterward to write proper answers to their question and to be sure that I was addressing every point that they were asking me. At the end, I believe that at the oral presentation, very few questions asked by the panel would not have been asked by the different colleagues or the mock panel that I did before the day of the interview. And that's it. If you're more interested by the project, just follow us and or reach me by email. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Camille, for this very interesting insight into building up the project that was finally successful at the end. I think it's very enriching for everyone who's here with us today. Thanks also to Francesca and to everyone joining us today. So now we open for questions. And I already noticed there are some for Camille, so we'll start for the sake of continuity with the questions for you, Camille. So first question is to have the findings of the fragment study available.
So we've not published yet our results. Hopefully it will be soon, but we have a website on fragmentproject.eu, and where we will put our publication. We have a couple, but it's ongoing. So
thank you. The other question, so very impressive work. Did your initial vision and proposal deviate much from the final project that you submitted?
I think it became, I'm not sure it became more complex, but by talking with colleagues, I was able to incorporate new components like the voice component that I did not imagine at the beginning, and I think it was a game changer. Also, regarding virtual experiments, I had the idea of running virtual experiments, but the way I aim to run them was very fuzzy at the beginning. So it did not deviate much because I believe every project is different, but in this very project, we have three research questions, and through three different methodologies, we are answering the same questions all the time, through different angles, through different approaches, to really have the more comprehensive picture of how the environment is stressing you and gets under your skin. That's the only question we are trying to answer. And then comes complexity in terms of methods, in terms of approaches, in terms of measurements. But the question was simple, and the project became bigger around the methodology, but it did not deviate much.
Thank you. I think it shows also the importance of the iteration with the other colleagues to get such feedback. And the final question for you, Camille, for the moment is, why did you decide not to include entities as partners in the project? And are the mentioned persons part of your project team?
Entities. So we are working with INSEM. We have a collaboration agreement with LIH. We have a collaboration agreement with INSEM, and we have visitings from other partners, but they are indeed not properly funded by the project. My understanding, and I might be wrong, is that the ERC Starting Grant is dedicated to fund you and your team mostly, to give you the opportunity to develop new skills, to build your team, in order to bring this core expertise to you and not specifically to other teams. So we are working in close collaboration. We have partnership that defines what is the added value for each partner, but at the end of the day, indeed, most of the grant is centered on LISER and my team.
Okay, thank you so much, Camille, again. So I will now go back to the first questions. So there is one on how to select a panel for a project that is very interdisciplinary. So specifically on tightly coupled socio-ecological systems, bridging biology and social sciences. So I think it is recommended that you select one panel that best reflects the project's main field of research. Think really what is the strongest discipline where you are also most credible on, and then write for that panel. And I saw a comment here about not being possible to have an interdisciplinary project, but the interdisciplinarity or multidisciplinarity is very important as well, and interesting to have this element. Regarding indicating a secondary panel, it is only recommended if you really need a second expertise to be evaluated, and the main field is really not possible to be covered. You should be careful with this, though, as Francesca said, because the secondary panel could become the primary review panel. So, Francesca, do you have anything to add on this?
No, I agree. Sorry.
Okay, I hope this answers your question and clarifies a little bit the interdisciplinary aspect as well as the secondary panel. So really think one main discipline that covers everything. The second question is on resources. How does resources get allocated in a manner that is justifiable to the panel? So the first slides mentioned the completion of activities for the lump sum for the advanced grant, and not determined by the success of the outcome. So does it mean the research outcomes have also to be aligned with the market objectives? Francesca, I will give that to you.
Yes, I think so. The allocation it's done by the PI, so it's you. You have to justify why you need some person months, some equipment, and so on. So it's there is no right way to allocate the resources. I mean, it's not that the panel is expecting something specific. It's expecting that the work you described is done with the resources that you put in the budget. And each one, so if you need a PhD in some field, you have to reflect this in the description of work and so on. If you have experiments in your methodology, you need to show that there is budget allocated to that. This is the only thing. What we want to explain before, this was in the lump sum, as you have only one work package actually, but only in the lump sum and only for advanced grant, is that if at the end of the project, because it's as also Camille said, it's a very risky project at the ERC fund. So if for any reason some objectives are not achieved, but you did everything and you did the action, you put in place mitigation to achieve, but still you didn't achieve something, it can anyway be paid totally as it was estimated because you showed the willingness to achieve that. No, there is no link with the market. I mean, in theory, these are ground nature research, so the market is something that is still far. You can show the impact, the potential impact in society, but no, you don't have to relate to anything related by the market.
Thank you, Francesca. I do not see any more questions unless I missed anything, but I think it's all covered and we are on top of the hour almost. So I want to thank everybody again, especially Camille and Francesca for attending, for your interest in today's webinar. And if you do have further questions later on or very specific questions, do not hesitate to contact Francesca and I. We're ready to help and looking forward to supporting you. So have a great day, everybody. Thanks.